Welcome back, Adam here, and today I'm looking at Coconut accounting and bookkeeping software and how accountants and accounting service providers can use it to provide their sole trader client base with access to an intuitive, simple to use bookkeeping software available via the app and in browser, whilst at the same time simplifying their own process by saving time and money. So I'm going to explain this with a demonstration of the software to show how switching some or all of your client base across might work for you. Here I am. I'm logged into Coconut in the web browser and with my accountant's login. Now, just note here that this accountant's login is only available to the accountant. So the page that you can see here is not accessible by your clients. Essentially, this is a summary of all of your clients who are set up on Coconut and that have been linked to your own personal portal. You can add new clients from here in the top right, and you can see an overview of your existing clients. I'm going to circle back to this page, but first, let's start with what your client is going to see. And we'll use Tim Taylor as an example. So I am the accountant and Tim Taylor is my client who I've set up with Coconut and linked to my portal. If I click on the impersonate button on the far right hand side, then it's going to take me into Coconut accounting and bookkeeping software as Tim would view it. So I can see all of the raw data in here that's been categorized by Tim. Now, how this actually works in reality is down to you and the options that you offer your clients. Where I've worked in the past, we've had different service levels with different price points for different clients, which meant that some clients would do their own bookkeeping in full and be very good at it. Other clients would only really use their bookkeeping software for raising invoices to their clients, and the rest of the bookkeeping was actually done by the accountant, and of course they would pay a fee for that. And both of those options and setups are fine here. But what you will notice is that this interface is designed with an end user in mind who doesn't have any accounting knowledge whatsoever. So where it is the client logging in to do their bookkeeping, they're not going to be overwhelmed with talks about journals and purchase and sales ledgers and nominal ledgers. Everything is going to be very easy to understand and very easy to use. So let's take a quick tour. So the bookkeeping tab contains all of the raw data. Now from here I can even make manual adjustments. So maybe if the client has received some cash income that they need to declare, I can enter the detail of that in here. And I'll just put anything for the description, cash income. I need to put a date of the transaction. I'm just going to circle back to the previous tax year. So this gets included in the information in the example that we'll move on to in a minute. This is a receipt in of £1,000. I'll need to categorize that income. Now, you'll know from dealing with sole traders is a lot of them have very simple setup. So they often have one source of income and then a few expenditure items which occur again and again on a regular basis. So they only really have to get used to a number or a few of these categories here, but you'll see there is income, there's expenditure in here and everything that you might need. I'm going to leave this one very simply as income. You also have the option here to allocate an income stream. So Coconut has the functionality to add multiple income streams. So it could be that your client has multiple self-employments. It could be that they have a self-employment and a rental property and they want to categorize different transactions to different income streams. That functionality is all included for the one user in here. I can also add notes to a transaction, and then I can go ahead and add that to our transaction list. So that was a manual adjustment. The other option, rather than making manual adjustments, and this option is going to be far more likely, you're just going to link directly to the client's bank account. Now this is done through the app and links can be set up to most major UK banks and then some. The transactions will then refresh at regular intervals throughout the day with no intervention needed from the client or the accountant to make that happen. Of course, if this is a client who you do the bookkeeping for then this is going to be very useful come the end of the tax year, because instead of chasing clients for their information, you're already going to have that to hand, cutting out those needless emails and phone calls. And whether the data is input manually or fed across from linked bank accounts, the process to actually categorize each transaction would be the same. And once it's done, that's all going to sit within the income streams, first of all, on the left-hand side, and then within the category filters down here at the bottom. And I can turn on and off this toggle here, which will remove, if needed, any categories that have nil transactions. The Receipts tab then gives the client the ability to take a photo or scan a copy of a receipt and attach it to a transaction. So you can see with this example, if I drill down into this, there is a photo and I can retrieve all of the detail from that transaction and that receipt. This, of course, is very useful to ensure that your client is meeting HMRC's record-keeping requirements, but also for you, if you need to make any tax adjustments, it's going to be much easier to do that, to see what's allowable and what isn't when you've got the original receipt to hand. The Bank Feed tab then won't show much in the desktop version, as the bank account has to be linked via the app. But as I said previously, once it's set up, this is going to update almost in real time, and it works with over 25 different banks here in the UK. Sales invoices can then be raised via the Invoices tab, which will also track the status of an invoice, whether it's been paid or whether it's outstanding. I'm going to briefly skip over the self-assessment tab, but we'll circle back to this one in a minute. You have reporting, so for example, profit and loss reports via income stream can be ran from here. MTD ITSA, of course, will become more relevant over time, but for the moment, this is just to show that the software is MTD compliant for when those changes are implemented. And then, of course, you've got the client profile at the end if the client needs to update any details or add and remove income streams. Now, the self-assessment tab is the one that I really want to talk about, because this is really where accountants are going to be able to streamline their process. Because as the client is doing their bookkeeping throughout the year, lots of the information needed to complete their self-assessment tax return is already being collected and input. Now, depending on the type of income that the client has, it might be that they need to add an SA 103S page to their tax return if their self-employed income is under 85,000. If it's over 85,000, it might be the SA 103F. They could also have property income, in which case you've got all the property related pages on the right-hand side. For accountants who plan to use a third-party software for tax submission, that's fine, because you also have an SNF file that can be copy pasted into the software. So from in here, you can select your income stream, and then you have the format to copy paste into your third-party software. But the truth is, you shouldn't really need that, because each Coconut license comes with access to Go Simple Tax, which is our in-browser self-assessment software. Now, it's important to point out that although the license is included, that doesn't mean that your client will ever see this button here. I can only see this because I'm the accountant impersonating the client. And you can actually go and control this. If I head back to my original accountant's login, you can control this by toggling here. So I can turn on access to GST and I can leave access turned off, and it'll default to being turned off in this portal. So the client will never actually see any mention of Go Simple Tax in the app or in browser. And in this case, that's what I want. I don't want the client to see anything about the software that I'm using to submit their tax return. So I'm going to leave this in the off position, which means that if I head back to impersonate Tim Taylor again, and head through to the self-assessment page, I can then use these reports to send Tim's information straight through to the Go Simple Tax software, which is included within the license. Now, just to show you how this works in full, I'm going to switch across to Go Simple Tax very quickly. And what you'll see is a very simple to use self-assessment software. So this is for the 22-23 tax year. You can see the client, Tim Taylor, and all the information is pulling directly from Coconut. Again, the software is very straightforward to use, so I can add new pages to a tax return if I have donations or gifts or employment that I need to declare to HMRC. And then once added, you You have an income section to add income and expenses to add expenses. So at the moment, all I have set up within Tim's tax return for the 22-23 tax year is this investments page, but I don't actually have any income input. If I switch back across to Coconut, I know that for Tim, who had self-employed income in the 22-23 tax year, if I'm happy that everything's updated and all that information, all the bookkeeping has been done, then I can run this report here. So the SA103S will apply to Tim. I can select his income stream. In this case, it was Tim Taylor, and I can select the tax year. Now, I can export that if I want, but again, you shouldn't really need to, because if I click on View, I get a chance to see an overview of the information that's been submitted and where it's been categorized. And then I can send that information to Go Simple Tax by clicking on the button here at the bottom. Now, if Tim wasn't actually set up with a Go Simple Tax account already, then you may be prompted at this point to do so. But again, most of that information, most of that setup information, the personal details are going to pull directly from Coconut anyway, so the setup process should be very quick. And if I head back to the previous page, again, I'm going to click on the Switch to Go Simple Tax button, which wouldn't be available to Tim. Remember, Tim wouldn't be able to see this. So now that I'm switched back across to Go Simple Tax, you can see on the left-hand side that the self-employed page has been added to the tax return. And if I click on this, you'll see that the information that had been input to Coconut now exists within Go Simple Tax. So we have Tim's income of 16,000. We have some expenditure by category, giving us our total profit for the year. You'll also notice here on the left-hand side that we have a tax calculation. So this tax calculation updates in real time. If I add or remove income or expenditure, this is going to update with the live figure. Now, as I'm sure you can already see, the great benefit of this is that you're not having to input information twice. You're not inputting the information into a bookkeeping software and then switching across to a submission software and re-inputting that information, possibly in the government gateway. It's all done automatically for you and will save you a lot of time. And from here, if I'm happy that self-employment is the only income that Tim has that needs to be declared on a tax return, I can either remove the investment pages. So I'll actually get rid of this one. I can remove pages from here. And then if I want to go ahead and submit this to HMRC, all I need to do is click on Edit to bring up the tailoring questions. I need to make sure all of these questions are answered. You'll recognize a lot of these questions from the tax return, asking if they're using the cash basis, the accounting period. So again, you would work through the normal tailoring questions. And then once you're happy with those, you would click continue and move through to submit the tax return. Another great thing about this software is the fact that it is intuitive. So it's going to look for errors in the return. It's going to look for opportunities in the return as well. So in this case, you can see this message here indicating that because I have expenses less than £1,000, a penny less, it might be beneficial to actually claim the trading allowance rather than the expenses. If I need to add pages to the return, I can do that by clicking New Page and maybe adding an employment page, working through with the P60 in the usual way and adding that information in manually. If I need to make changes to the self-employed section and the figures that are within here, what you'll notice if I click on Edit, changes must be made within the Coconut application. So all I would do is save my return and then head back to Coconut, make the amendments within Coconut, and then you can resubmit this report, rerun the report and send it back across to Go Simple Tax. So if you are an accountant with a client base that includes individuals with self-employed income or that have rental income, then moving some or all of your client base across to Coconut as a bookkeeping and accounting solution could also help you to simplify your self-assessment process. The benefits of Coconut include free access to Go Simple Tax included with every license, the ability to restrict the client from seeing any mention of Go Simple Tax from their end, a completely flexible approach to the licensing setup, meaning you can bring across as many or as few clients as you like, a smooth integration between Coconut and Go Simple Tax that will prevent you from rekeying figures to multiple software and cutting out avoidable human error in the process. A real-time view of your client's tax liability at the click of a button throughout the tax year as the client updates their Coconut account. If you're interested in learning more, then visit getcoconut.com/accountants or follow the link below.